This is the Ted Wallison Podcast. Brought to you by Halenda's, the meat people. Enjoy their award-winning products at selected Metro, Sobeys, Fortino's, and Foodland locations. Halenda's, the way sausage should taste. And Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And now, here's Ted Wallison.
My guest this week is one of Canada's most recognized and respected stand-up comedians. He'll be appearing, as he does each Sunday, the last Sunday of every month, at Yuck Yucks in Toronto. This time around, it's February 26th. It's the Nubian Show, starring Kenny Robinson. How are you, Kenny?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm pretty good, thank you. And belated happy 65th birthday, I believe, right? Last month?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm finally getting around to filling out the papers. I figured if I didn't fill out the CPP and all that, then I officially wouldn't be old. And then enough people said, look, you better get it while you can.
Well, do you know how much money you're going to get now every month?
Not much.
No, I can tell you exactly. Hold on. Let me just look it up here. Hold on. I've got it written down here because I know I get
3 Xena Cherry gigs could replace it.
I think old age security, I think, is like $680 a month.
Yeah. Plus, I'm going to make them take taxes off.
Yeah. Which will give you about a third of a month's rent, if that. No, maybe about a tenth of a month's rent in Toronto. Well, congratulations! You had a big evening that night for your birthday, right?
Yeah, it was great. We had 10 comics on. Everybody from Tony Vendetti to Evan Carter to Darren Frost to Shannon Laverty, Crystal Ferrier, John Paul, my friend Sterling Scott flew in from Edmonton to do the show. So it was great. And first time doing the little comedy bar on the Danforth. Beautiful venue.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a nice turnout. The show, I didn't know when I said the late show, I didn't know the late show started at 11. So needless to say, 3/4 of the people invited needed naps before it started. And we wrapped the show up about 1:30. So it was about a half hour longer than anybody there thought. And, but everybody that was left over still hit the bar pretty hard for a good solid half hour. So it was good.
That's good. I was looking back at my notes, and the last time we had you on, the last time you and I chatted on this podcast was, believe it or not, was back in November of 2021, like almost a year and a half ago. And things were just starting to revolve again. Everybody was just sort of coming out of the COVID lockdowns, and performers were getting back on stage, and because everybody had been cooped up, and doing shows from their basements and from their living rooms and stuff. But now
I missed the lockdown.
You do you? You're nuts.
I do. Because if you actually did a show in front of live people, you wanted your material to be tighter and it was more exciting. And now it's back to, you can't say what you just said. I'm offended. I'm going to go inside and tell everybody not to book you again. So we're back to that again.
But I was going to say, people must have been happy to see you back, because as much as performers were itching to perform, audiences were itching for live performance to come back as well. So they must have been. Were they?
Oh, definitely.
So in one sense, would they have been kinder because they're happy to see you back?
I don't know if they're kinder. I mean, it seems like we're having more reports of comics being attacked on stage than we did before the pandemic. So, so that's a new thing. Or maybe it's just people forgot how to behave in public. And, being able to drink without having to wear a mask in between sips may have changed the way people behave. Yeah. But definitely people are glad to come back to the shows. We're not quite getting standing room only every show like we did once upon a time. But in the other breath, there's so many different shows to compete with now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but all in all, everybody is glad to be back at work. It's like a big strike ended.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll never get back what we lost, but man, it's good to be back at work again.
Yeah, no kidding. And it's fair to say that this country and our neighbors to the south find themselves more divisive than ever. And with that in mind, are you more careful about the politics that you introduce into your humor? in fear of offending someone?
No.
No, you don't really, because you don't really give a damn.
I may as well not I may as well not leave the house if I'm gonna be worried about that.
Right.
But I did do a tour out west where, the more I saw Canadian flags, the more banjos I was hearing in my head. It was like in the interior of
Yeah.
BC. And, there was like Trudeau the traitor, and you couldn't actually, signs everywhere on the way to the venue. And you couldn't really ask him, well, what did Justin do that was that you consider
Yeah.
treasonous? There's no discussion. And of course, I walk in, tie and suit, and ready to rock. And there's animal heads and fish all over the walls around the stage of performing
Very
at.
nice.
So I definitely was in that heart of darkness. I was taking that boat up down the river, so to speak.
I find it quite humorous when I read some of these comments in social media when they refer to whatever you think of Trudeau. And honestly, I'm not a huge fan of his, but when people start calling him a dictator, I'm thinking, do you have any idea what the word dictator means? Like, do you like? Can you
No.
honestly compare him to Vladimir Putin? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like they just pull words out of the air.
Like, one of the jokes I'm saying is, remember they were saying that Fidel Castro was his father? I wish Castro was his father. Because that whole convoy would have lasted 3 days. After the third day, anybody see the truckers? They were here last night. Well, did you check by the hot tub? I mean, if he had that Castro DNA, we wouldn't have had 3 weeks of Ottawa being overturned. It would have been 3 days and done. We don't know what dictatorship means. We don't know what freedom
Yeah.
means. I found us quite spoiled in
Yeah,
all
I know.
that. It was funny. I was reading this article on Facebook about James Gardner, and they're saying, too bad he wasn't patriotic. He was such a liberal. Too bad he didn't love his country. And I said, did you guys not read the part that he got into acting when he came back from Korea?
Yeah.
The guy served in the military, went to Korea. How can you say that Jim Rockford was not a
Yeah,
patriot?
exactly.
The man went to war for his
I
country.
know.
And you're typing for yours.
Yes, that's right.
It's
That's right.
insane.
I know. It's they have no concept of reality, and the usage. Some of the words, like, as I mentioned, dictator, Nazi. I mean, these are words. These are heavy duty words that you can't just pull out of the air and toss around like crumbs to pigeons in the park. Like, think about what you're saying before you say it.
Unfortunately, that's what we're living in. Or I like how progressive has become an insult. You must be a liberal. I've been accused of that.
Yeah.
So liberal is become originally woke, which was used in the black community. It was us saying you're aware of what's going on. You're hip to what the man's running down on you. Now woke is anybody that thinks opposite of what you do.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I think those Canadians, we get too wrapped up in American news. This led to a big ruckus. One of my last performances I did, I said we got all tore up over Roe versus Wade. Whereas that's not an issue for us. If anything, I thought Roe versus Wade, if it's enforced, would be good for Canadian tourism. So, somebody did like that approach. But we don't have school shootings. The worst we have is a transgender guy with big knockers, upsetting people in Oakville.
That's a wild story in itself, though, is it not?
Well, the good thing is teenage boys are less obsessed with boobs after seeing this character.
Yes, I think they're probably afraid of them
They've
now
been
in
turned
case the
off
guy
now.
swings around too. Yeah, or if the guy turns around too fast, he could knock you on your ass. That is what my worry would
And he's
be.
teaching shop. What could go wrong there?
I know. Yeah,
I remember shop
that's
teachers with
bizarre.
only 3 fingers. So, how has this
Yeah,
person managed to
uh-huh.
dodge it?
I know exactly. So when you're doing your comedy, you're an equal opportunity joker, as I was going to say, insulter, but you don't really
Well,
insult people.
see,
You
that's
just
never been my goal.
no,
Yeah,
no, I know,
my
but
goal
you're an
was to
equal
get a
opportunity. Like if
laugh.
you,
But,
yeah, and if it's at the expense of a conservative, it's at the expense of a conservative or a liberal. Doesn't matter to you,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I used to go at Jack Layton like a rabid dog. I refer to him as a snake oil salesman. And of course, my friends
Yeah.
to the left that drove them, how could you say that? But yet meanwhile, the joke, one of the jokes I use now to small response is I could never vote NDP because I'll never be wealthy enough to afford it. I can't vote Tory because I can't afford them, and I'll never be rich enough to afford to be able to be an NDPer. They want to give away everything, so it's
Yeah.
if you talk about these things, you're going to offend people. But I mean, I can only talk about my cat so many times. And, if I'm 65, what am I going to talk about? My girlfriend and and our lack of a sex life now? That'll gross the young kids
Yeah.
out, so you try, I think one of the problems though is nobody's reading a newspaper anymore.
No.
Like
No.
Frenchie
You're
McFarlane,
right.
God bless him. Frenchie used to cut out everything from every newspaper and write jokes about it. When he had a gig, he never did those jokes. But still, I'm in that
No.
school, the more school, Saul school, where you gather that newspaper, you circle, and you go, well, what are they talking about the water cooler now? Problem is, there's no more water coolers. People have been working from home the last 2 years.
Yeah, well, and it's not just that. You've got a generation that doesn't read newspapers. They don't read magazines. They don't listen to the radio. They download music and they stream television programs. They don't read newspapers. Do you remember back when you were a kid when you used to do current events,
Yep.
where you literally have to cut out a story from a newspaper, read it, and then read it to the class and explain what the story was all about?
Oh, see now,
You'd never see that now.
the teachers would tilt their heads like lab retrievers, golden retrievers, if you suggested that to them. Or as a kid, I grew up part of my time in Chicago, and one of the newspapers had an ad a newspaper advertising on TV. That was either how big newspapers were or a sign that they had to advertise that the newspaper business was dying.
Yeah,
But their slogan was "Don't be a conversation dropout."
yeah,
So, and we had to do current events, but I was fortunate. 1968, I was grade 5, grade 6. It was a very good year. You had Martin Luther King's assassination, you had civil unrest, you had Kennedy, you had Vietnam. Just the beginning of recycling was started. Teachers would give a shit for eating grapes because we were supposed to boycott grapes to support the migrant farm workers in
hmm
California. So I couldn't imagine any of those things being something going on in a fifth or sixth graders class now. Except for now, you have to say that everybody's gender fluid and there's more than two genders and yada yada, which is a whole different dance that I'm not paying the cover to.
yeah. And do you touch on that at all?
No, because I have no dog in that fight.
Right.
You know, if if like I remember I got in trouble for somebody scolded me for still calling Bruce Jenner Bruce Jenner. And I said, "Hey, y'all called Cassius Clay. You called Muhammad Ali Cassius Clay for years, and all he did was change his religion. So give me a break if it takes me a while to catch on."
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, people still call the Rogers Center Sky Dome as well.
Well, see,
Yeah.
we're even backwards in that. We need to get woke and call it the Rogers Center
Yeah, exactly.
and whatever the Air Canada Center is now.
Yeah,
It's still Air
whatever.
Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever banks got it now, right? Because it's
Who's
all
ever
banks.
paying the money for 3 years?
You notice that though, all the sporting events, the sporting the venues, most of them, or a vast majority of them, are sponsored by financial institutions.
Yep.
The economy is going downhill. People are broke. Inflation is out of control, and the banks are still growing and growing.
And you'll have to pay prime if you want to sit in the middle of the theater instead of the front row down stateside now at some of the theaters. Have you seen that?
I did see that. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, most people aren't even going to movies anymore.
I know, and I don't want to sit in the middle of the row anyway, because I'd rather sit in the aisle so I could stick my leg out, or if I got to go to the can, I can get up and do it quickly without having to trip over 15 pairs of legs.
My mother told me sit by the aisle because it's harder for a molester to bother you if you're on an aisle seat. That's what I was taught as a kid.
Well, that's true. I had never thought about that. Your mother was a wise woman.
Well, back then a movie theater was my daycare. You know, you pay $1, you get in, and you see them. You stay 3 times to see the movie. Then my mother would come in 10:45. Don't you have the sense to come home? dinner's been waiting. I'm full of popcorn. I wasn't like, get in here. So, back then I'd see the movie 3 times before I finally, got tired of seeing it. I leave. Now you got to show up right on time, and they empty the theater, and they sweep, and they sanitize, and there's no sitting around saying this is where I came in or I want to see it twice. Those days are long gone.
Do you find that from the days when you first started doing comedy and the kind of comedy that existed, how much it's changed, and is it changed for the better? Like, are we raising a generation of comedians who are more hip to what's going on in the world, or are we raising a generation, or is there a generation of comedians being raised who are more self-centered?
Well, a little bit of both, I'd say. I find now that people that are offended by what I said are getting younger and better looking, but as opposed to when I was younger and better looking. But
Yeah.
there's comics that are still pushing the edge and trying to have something of social commentary, and then there's others that are just talking about nothing. And but then I remember when somebody say, well, he talks about nothing. He talks about nothing. I said, well, nobody's asking him to say anything. There's not a big demand of people lined up going, when there's social commentary, that's when I'll come back to the comedy clubs. There's not a big demand for that. But I know I've been fortunate to been a mentor or work with, young comics, in the, 40 years, but especially since the birth of the Nubian show. So, I've seen all kinds come and go since then. I find that for the most part, women comics tend to be more socially aware of topics and things that are going on. Whereas a lot of the male comics, they've just discovered oral sex and they feel the need to do 25 minutes on that. And I believe you never really need more than 15, but it should be spliced throughout your 45-minute show.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. I get it on both levels. Just trust me. When you talk to these younger
Actually, I've noticed on Facebook you've been getting a bit bluer.
I'm you know what? I can be as blue as the next guy, and I think you know that. And there are times I think
that's why I was shocked. I said Ted's always worked clean. He's getting kind of pulled over to the dark side here. What's happening?
Well, no, I mean, there's always been a dark element to my humor, my sense of humor. But on the radio, when I was back on the radio, you're limited a lot. And when I did stand up, I didn't really care, except I knew that in the goal for most people at our age when we started doing stand up was you wanted to get together 8 or 9 solid minutes so you could make it onto some television program and get discovered and get your own sitcom. And of course, profanity doesn't get you on television. It does now because of streaming services and the fact that you can get away with anything outside of.
And now there isn't a single TV show that shoots you up to the top like it used
No.
to. Before, if you got the Tonight Show, you were in there. Nobody hoped to get the Joey Bishop show.
No, or Merv Griffin.
And there was. Well, Merv was your fight up, was your resume builder to get to, and Mike Douglas. Yeah. Mike Douglas and Merv, that was like a training school for us kids on days we were sick because Mike Douglas came on every afternoon. Right. So you got to see Frank Gorshin co-host for 5 days in a row. So this week's my co-host is, and but I mean those were the credits that you built your way up to the Tonight Show. But now the Tonight Show just doesn't have the same oomph. In fact, I really couldn't even tell you who is the official host of the Tonight Show. Is it Jimmy Fallon?
Yeah, I think it is.
Is it the other Jimmy that's originally out of Las Vegas, Kimmler? I mean, there's so many different hosts and shows now that unless you know the person that's on there, it's not really a big deal.
No, it's true. It's true.
Ted Woloshyn returns in a moment.
Have you been tasked with the role of a state executor or expected maybe in the future you will be? Well, if so, let me make your life a lot simpler by introducing you to my friend Debbie Stanley. Debbie is the founder of ETP Canada. They specialize in estate administration. Their goal simply is to help Canadian executors understand their role and how to deal with the loved one's estate. Let's face it, there's no school for this, but ETP Canada offers services such as executor support, estate accounting, and they have a new online course called Executor Ready. It's an engaging video designed to make estate administration easier and affordable. And those are two comforting thoughts during a stressful time. So call Debbie Stanley at 1-866 309 0387. That's 1-866 309 0387. Or you can get her at info@etpcanada.ca. That's info@etpcanada.ca. Hi, it's Ted Wallison for Tom's Place, where the month of February is all about hearts and family. Tom's late father, William Mahalik, was born on February 20th, 1916. He founded the original store back in 1958, believing in the importance of caring for your customers and always working hard to give the customer the best deal. These strong values carry on today at Tom's Place, and in honor of his father and the family business he created, Tom is celebrating with a Family Day sale. Selected 100% wool suits that retail for up to $5.99, now starting at just $179. Lips and dress shirts on final clearance. Winter coats 50% off, and beautiful cashmere sweaters regularly $500, now only $99. And they're available in men's and women's styles. It's all about family at Tom's Place. And at Tom's Place, everyone is treated like part of the family. The Tom's Place Family Day sale, all month long in the heart of Kensington Market.
Now back to Ted Wallison.
Well, the self-produced specials are very commonplace nowadays, and you think to yourself, "Wow, I've got my own comedy special," and you think, "Okay, so there's 195 channels on there. What are the odds of me seeing that?"
Well, the thing is, nobody was willing to pay for you to have your special. So if you didn't put your own money up, you wouldn't get to have it.
No.
Everywhere where you used to be able, like even Netflix has cut back on what they're doing and they're paying out and they're putting out. So it's just like originally Just for Laughs was really hot because you'd go there and, you hear about, some people getting a development deal. Well, there are no more development deals being done. I remember when I thought if I could get the Alan Thicke show, that it would be a skyrocket, to the stars. And I never did get the Alan Thicke show, but I also surpassed most of my friends that did get to do the Alan Thicke show.
I did the Alan Hamill show.
Okay, well that was before Alan Thicke.
And I'll tell you a funny story. This is the honest to God truth. They would tape two. It was out in Vancouver. They would tape 2 shows a day. After the second show was over, they had a big cast party. Everybody who was on the first show and the second show, plus the cast and the crew, were all invited to the suite at some big hotel downtown in Vancouver. They had cocktails and they had food, and people sat around and they drank. And suddenly people, what's that smell? Oh, okay, somebody's passing around a joint. And Alan Hamill, and if he hears this, he can't deny it, had a Gucci roach clip.
Well, that may have been a gift.
And I'm thinking, like, that's now where you've made it when your roach clip is from Gucci. Right? Nothing like paying.
Things you can buy at duty free. Well, as one time I was with Russell Peters in San Francisco. He brought me down to work with him, and he wanted to buy me a Gucci shoulder bag. And I'm going, Russell, there's nowhere in my world that I would ever need a Gucci bag.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to carry my kid's hockey stick tape in it? And, and when I'm in the locker room helping it with his skates on, all the other fathers are going, nice purse.
Yeah.
There's nowhere in my world that a Gucci bag, except for it might have attracted a different quality of women towards me that, would have dated me just hoping that I would let them have that bag.
But you're quite the snappy dresser, though. Whenever you post your postings for your upcoming shows, you're always nattily attired. You look like the original gangster,
Part of it was my father was walked that line between crime and showbiz was sharp. But also in Dick Gregory's first book, he wrote that a performer owes it to his audience to look as much like a celebrity as possible because they may only go out once a month, and reality, you are the closest thing to a star they may have any kind of contact with. So you owe it to them to look that part. So that's what Dick Gregory wrote in 1960, 66, 67 in his first book. And before I even got into stand-up, that kind of stuck in my head, So that's always been that's always been something that's been there with me,
And then at the same time, you got a guy like George Carlin who's performing around the same time, and he's out there in torn jeans and tie-dye T-shirts, but a different audience.
He used to be suits and ties.
Originally, he was.
Yeah, he did a whole change. But back then, but like Lenny Bruce said, the hipster comic was, dark suit, white shirt. So that way that, you look like you were straight, even though you weren't straight. That was your disguise for back
Yeah.
in the day. But, it's like sometimes I'll pop into a club just to hang out. And, summertime, I got shorts on. I go, do you want to do a spot? No, man, I got shorts on. I don't go on stage in shorts, so I've had to tell comics, you show up at my gig wearing shorts or sweats, I'm going to give your spot to somebody else.
Really? And how do they react, the younger ones?
Uh, Kenny's crazy. Kenny's tripping. But then they also learned that Papa don't take no mess.
Yeah.
It's you got to have some kind of dress. People are paying $25, man. People, a guy drops $100 or a girl drops $100 if they take a date before they even hear good evening. By the time you pay the $25 cover plus tax, and then you got the parking, and if you got a babysitter and you order 2 drinks and order of wings, you've dropped $100 bill before you've heard your first joke.
Yeah.
So I think you owe it to your audience to come out looking like you are showbiz. But I could sit at home and watch all these late night talk shows and have my theory shot to hell. 5 nights out of 5.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think when you look back at the ones who have succeeded, who've managed to build a solid career, are the ones who come across as being professional, whether it's in their attire or whether it's in their disposition or the way they treat their audience before or after a show.
Exactly. I can give you 2 perfect examples. Okay, Russell Peters, he's incredible. When he always does a meet and greet after his shows. He will not leave until everybody who wants to have a picture taken or an autograph has been taken care of. He will not leave. And I said, "Wow, man, that's incredible." He goes, "Someday nobody will want it." So that kind of struck me as, loving your people that love you. Also, you'll remember this, Jim Carrey,
Yep.
before he went Hollywood, his, Percy, his dad used to refer to the tux and the bally, patent leather shoes as, this is your uniform. If you worked at a garage, you'd have to wear a uniform. If you worked here, you'd wear if you were an usher, this is your work clothes. So, I mean, Jimmy used to go out and do all those shows in a tux.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
And that's the old style, which is come back again, if it ever really left, I suppose.
Yeah.
Now, when you
it's left. I mean,
yeah, when you work with these younger comics, what's the biggest thing that you have to impress upon them as they're climbing the rungs of this ladder, other than their attire?
I tell them, keep writing. You'll never have enough material.
Yeah.
You will never have enough material. I had a showcase recently, and we had some TV people there, and I had to take 3 or 4 of them aside and go, stop using that N word. I said, I use it once, maybe twice. Each time it's to its maximum efficiency. I said, and don't forget, I said, I said, these are white people who make these decisions. And guess what? Nobody in their position wants to catch flack for allowing you to come on TV and saturate the airwaves with the N word. They'll lose their jobs over it.
Yeah.
So I said, so you got to drop that. And then I take them, even the ones, I mean, part of my reputation is being a blue comic. I ain't going to lie. That was that, as much as I loved, the political humor of Dick Gregory, it was Red Fox and Richard Pryor that, jammed their screwdriver in my head as a 16 and 17-year-old and set me on the wrong path.
Yeah.
But I tell the kids, look, if you don't want to work in December, go ahead and be as nasty as you want. You won't get the corporate Christmas gigs that pay $2,000 a chunk.
Yeah.
Well, now I hear they're not paying that much, so why compromise yourself? But I says, you're still working too blue. The cleaner you work, the more often you're gonna work. And I tell you this as a man that I felt bad because as my kids were growing up, we were the only family on many of their teams that didn't have a backyard pool.
Yeah.
Why? Because Daddy was a dirty comic. Clean comics had backyard pools.
I see.
Novelty acts, magicians.
Yeah. Yeah. Even
so I keep writing.
You know how people talk about when they have school dreams, that they go back to school and they go and you have these dreams where you're back at school and you've got to sit down and you got to write an exam and you look at the questions and you don't recognize anything. It's like absolutely nothing because you didn't go to any classes. That's the kind of dreams I get occasionally when I dream about going back to do stand up. It's I'll get up on stage and I think to myself, I don't have any material, and I can't remember anything I've ever done in the past, and I haven't written anything new in 29 years. And I just stand there and I just wet myself and thank God the dream ends, and then I got to go change my clothes.
Well, improv, improv.
Yeah.
I see. What was great about coming back is I could remember most of the material that I had written before the
Mm,
pandemic. So I had all this pandemic material, and then of course Black Lives Matter. It was during the same period of time, the first year, so it was part of it. So I had a nice 2 year chunk of writing and riffing material. And my attitude was shame on anybody that doesn't have something new to say after 2 years of not saying anything in public.
yeah, you're right.
You would have something to say because you're an intelligent cat, you're an experienced comic, and they say your name, you hit it, and your gut response is going to be get that first laugh, because after you get that first laugh, your self-confidence goes rocket, and the audience now goes, this is not another jerk coming here to waste my time, you're for real.
Yeah.
So you'll find that first laugh. It could be just an off the cuff remark, but you'll get it. And then all the juices and creativity will come back to you. You'll remember stuff you forgot you ever did, and then even better, you'll start creating on the spot. That's what I think would happen to you. And don't forget, your point of view is not the same point of view on something that you would have had 29 years ago.
No, that's true. That's true.
You may be more of a get off my lawn.
Yeah.
29 years ago, you were passing me that grass, and now you're, hey, get off my grass.
Yes, exactly.
And now you're going, this is just grass.
Yeah. Kenny Robinson is my guest here. How's the television stuff been for you lately? You got some stuff coming up, I understand.
Well, I'm working on a pilot, which I'm not allowed to disclose anything about it. So I've scored a couple of days shooting on that, and may become a reoccurring character. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I go to set next Friday. Next Wednesday, I go to wardrobe. So that's always something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Anytime you don't have to bring 3 of your own suitcases for wardrobe is a good day in Canadian film.
Yes, it is.
So I've got that. I've been offered. They're shooting some people shooting something out in Halifax. They said there was a role written for me, so that's coming up in April. And then I've been looking at a script that been on my bedside for 2 years now, and it looks like they maybe will finally get ready to roll soon. So it looks like my acting arm is getting that well needed vaccine. I'm going to get that shot of some acting work coming in soon.
Yeah. So if you had a choice, if you could do just one or the other at this point in time, would you want to take a break from stand up and focus just on acting?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I originally got into stand up because I couldn't get into acting.
Yeah.
So, the opportunities and roles were limited for me many years ago. And now, you're 65, Kenny, the roles, and, I auditioned for the wise grandfather or father on a lot of Hallmark Christmas films
Hmm.
that I don't score the part, but it's basically the same script. Look, you only got one shot of happiness in this lifetime, and you're going to regret it. And then I slip into Bogart in Casablanca. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but for the rest of your life, you'll regret it if you'll get on the plane with that boy. So getting a lot of those type of things. But there's a lot of chops that I haven't had a chance to use.
A lot of those Hallmark shows that you see on television here, many of them, if not all of them, or a lot of them at least, are filmed right here in Toronto or in parts of Canada anyway.
Toronto, Hamilton. Um, Hallmark has kept the Canadian film business alive for the last 5 years, I'd say.
Yeah.
It was funny. I got a message from somebody in England telling me they saw this Hallmark thing that I did on TV in England and how happy and surprised they were to see me.
Yeah.
So I'm going, they're showing that in England, So it was, so that was a nice tap on the shoulder that said it was okay.
Yeah.
And Robin Duke was in the show, and there was a lot of Scott Thompson was on the show. So I mean, there were some serious names on that roll call.
Yeah. Yeah. If you sit down and you watch those shows, even if you don't like that genre, just out of curiosity, take a look at the credits at the end of the show and see how many of those names you'll recognize as being Canadian actors, and you would be surprised. And I mean,
Yep.
Art Hindle shows up in there.
Oh, and you'll see locations.
Yeah, and you see locations as well. Of course, they never admit it's Toronto. It's always got to be somewhere in the United States, although that's starting to change now too.
Or they use a lot of the East Coast towns for Boston.
Yeah,
Halifax and what have you, they use for Boston. And
yeah. See, that's what I want to do one day. I want to win. I want to win the lottery, and I want to put together a film with all my friends, and I want to shoot it in Chicago, and make like Chicago is Toronto. I want to pretend that Chicago is Toronto. Like this, the story will be set in Toronto, but filmed in Chicago. Just as a twist.
that would be fun. And the way things are going now, we could almost have the gunfire in the background really wouldn't give anybody a tip
No, not
off.
anymore. No, sadly, no. Things are changing, and not necessarily for the better. Kenny Robinson appears at Yuck Yucks at the end of this month, February 26th, as part of the Nubian Show, which is it's every Sunday, the final Sunday in every month, right?
The last Sunday of every month.
And who's on the bill with you this time around?
Oh, geez. I've got Ronnie Edwards, my old pal.
Yeah.
Ronnie's on this show as well as Keisha Brownie, who just found out that she's going to be appearing at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival. So she'll be doing her first TV appearance with that. John Paul, who is on breakfast television almost 3 days out of 5, and he's doing great things. Let's see who else is on. That's 3 of my 6 names that I mentioned. I've got like 6 acts on there.
Mm-hmm.
So, very funny young comic named Inoji. She's very funny, very good. She talks a lot about things as a married woman and mother. So it's different than some of the younger comics that are out there. Different way of looking at things. So, Hashim Khaledi, who is one of my favorite comics. He's nothing short of brilliant. So I think you need to see him definitely. So there's always a mix of new people coming up with old names. That's how I keep the show fresh.
Mm-hmm.
You have to give new opportunities. It's hard to book. I mean, I got to keep it balanced. I try to bring in people that haven't done it in years. Maybe the last time they did it, they got booed off, and I said, okay, well, let's see if you're better now. So you got to give those shots. You got to give somebody their first experience. You also got to make sure you got enough killers to make it worth the $25 cover charge for people.
Yeah.
So you still got to have people that'll deliver. So it's all balanced. Can't have it be a sausage fest, as my friend Carla Collins refers to some shows. So you got to make sure you have enough voices of women on the show. So it's a challenge, but I've figured out the formula and I'm still playing with it, and hopefully the good Lord will let me keep on going another 28 years. I don't know if I want another 28 years of this, but we still hope to keep on going as long as we're lucky enough to.
You should do a sausage fest though. That would be a good book. That would be a good booking.
Well, it's not hard to do.
Are you still actively involved with the Canadian Comedy Hall of Fame?
Yes, I'm still president. We're still. We just had a meeting 2 weeks ago, and we're trying to. We're trying to. I want to keep the $25 lifetime membership fee going on for another year. I like that. I think because everybody has. You get a first crack at first dib at tickets. You get you get to vote on some things, on like new inductees.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I want to do. I feel that McLean and McLean need to be acknowledged.
I agree with you 100%.
So, I mean, they got arrested for the same stuff that George Carlin and Lenny Bruce did, but, we don't care about that. I first saw them when I had a date with a girl. I was grade 10. I was 16. I waited all year long to finally ask this girl out on a date, and Lighthouse was playing Winnipeg. And they were the opening act, and I had known, who's McLean and McLean? Oh, there's these comedians. And I heard them, and I almost had a stroke. Here I am on this date with this, every time I looked at her, I heard harp music, and and my, I got nervous the idea of having to kiss her goodnight, and then the McLean brothers come on, and it's this and it's that, and I'm embarrassed that I'm with this really nice girl, and I took her, and I at my idea, I'm subjecting her to hear all this filthy smut. And and then when I wasn't with her and I got to hear it, I went, "That's hilarious!" And I got to open with them a couple of years later. And what was really funny is where I lived in Transcona, one of them had a house just down the street from me. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And then years later, I think it was Kitchener or somewhere, I was opening for them, and their road manager, Tiny, he used to be the bouncer at the Pandora Inn in Transcona. And I said, "Man, I remember you wouldn't let me in the Pandora because I didn't have ID." And he just looked at me like, "And I still wouldn't let you in." So it was, but I think though, every comic that's ever, cashed in on the so-called freedom of speech or the freedom to offend
Yeah,
or, the freedom not to self-censor, we stand on the shoulders of the McLean brothers.
you're
And
absolutely right.
I'd love to, of course, everybody's going to go for people they're more familiar with on TV and what have you. But, coming from a stand up point of view and from doing comedy live in live venues where, tickets are sold and liquor is sold, I think that the McLeans are underrated, overlooked, and past due. Plus, this year we had Gowan perform at the gala, and that was great. And he talked about how SCTV, they had all the tapes on the tour buses, and how Canadian comedy was such a big thing for him. Well, when I heard that, I said, well, I bet you we could get Burton Cummings in this because, Burton produced a couple of their albums. And it was them doing Clap for the Wolfman. It was them in the background of the studio doing, Clap for the Wolfman.
I didn't know that.
So at that time, I used to do Wolfman Jack impressions for all the kids that were hanging out the smoker's door back at Transcona Collegiate. And, so I do the Wolfman impression. So it kind of goes full circle, that. So I'm thinking like, hey, we could score that. And then Burton as the closing musical act for the, for the kickoff of the party. If that doesn't say Canadian comedy and Canadian showbiz, nothing does. You know what I mean?
Yep, you're right. And you think of back in in the days of McLean and McLean, there was no Yuck Yucks. There were no comedy clubs per se. There were working places in Toronto like
No.
El Macombo because they were fortunate enough that they were there was a musical component to their act, that they weren't just
Yeah.
comedians, they were singers as well. In fact, most of their comedy came from music.
And they had big booking. I mean, they had big
Yeah,
management. Never heard of a comedy act. Since then having that level of management they had. I forget the name of the guy, but he handled everybody that was hot in Canadian music.
I think it was David Bluestein, wasn't it?
Not sure. Bluestein's always been on the fringe of everything, though.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But it was somebody that was up there that But I think the same people that handled Burton and all that type of thing. So that was a
Yeah.
whole different thing back then.
So people want to get involved in the Canadian Comedy Hall of Fame. What's the best way for them to do that? You got a website?
You can go to our website, which is Canadian Comedy Hall of Fame.ca, I'm sure. We're adding new stuff this year. Oh, it was really cool at the gala we had this year at the Royal York. We had we had a replica of the Great White North backdrop, so you could sit on the couch and have the background, and you could have your pictures taken with you and your buddies with a table full of beer bottles like you were hosers.
That's true. The Canadian Comedy Hall of Fame is something that, I mean, because you talk to people about the entertainment industry and the effects that the Canadians and Canada's had in the entertainment industry, and one of the main things that'll pop up is our prominence in female singers, rock music, and comedy. Huge.
Oh,
And
I mean,
and then you
just the
start asking
effect that
questions.
SCTV had on everybody.
Yep.
SCTV was seen stateside, and more people wanted to get into Second City after seeing that. And almost everybody from SCTV's gone on to have giant careers. If you
Yeah.
look at that, just even with your Howie Mandels, we don't have to mention Jim Carrey. This year, Steinberg was awarded, and also Mort Saul.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's going way back. I mean, Mort Saul, you could put him as an equal to Lenny Bruce without the rest and the drugs. But I mean, Mort Saul was one of the sick comics of the day. So when you want to talk about a Dick Gregory or Lenny Bruce, Mort Saul was in that conversation. Canadian guy. And he
Absolutely.
was still pretty,
Yep.
pretty active until shortly before his death.
And then you take a look at the impact that like Wayne and Schuster had. I mean, they were on Ed Sullivan. It seemed like every other Sunday they were on.
They set the record for the most Ed Sullivan appearances.
Wow.
So there's a
Great
lot
stuff.
for us to be proud of, and it's sad to think that some people don't want to scrape up $25 to help push it forward and to embrace it. You couldn't go to well, there are no more greasy spoons, but you couldn't go to you couldn't go to a franchised Waffle House down the street and have breakfast for $25. So, definitely, I think if you have an interest or love of things that are Canadian, especially Canadian comedy, you definitely need to come to our website, give it a look-see, and we're only going to be growing and getting better.
Good stuff. Kenny Robinson, always a pleasure chatting with you. I appreciate you taking the time, my friend.
Thank you. Always good seeing you. You take care.
So once again, thanks for being with us. If it's your first time here, we appreciate it and hope you come back and hope you recommend our podcast to your friends. And don't forget, follow us. Also, don't forget, if you get a chance, go online, fill out your organ and tissue donation card. You could change or even save a life. Have a great week.
The Ted Wallacham podcast has been brought to you by Halenda's, the meat people. Enjoy their award-winning products at selected Metro, Sobeys, Fortinos, and Foodland locations. Halenda's, the way sausage should taste. And Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. The Ted Wallacham podcast is produced by Joey Roselli. Technical production by Paul Gatt. Music by Bike Thieves. I'm Becky Coles. Submit your questions and comments to ted@twmedia.ca.